Okay, our program tonight is on numismatic short stories and tall tales. And I'll start with my sharing for tonight. Um, my own numismatic interests have focused heavily on the Ptolemies of Egypt for over 40 years. So I'm going to both begin and end with stories about the Ptolemies, but in between, I have some stuff on ancient Rome, medieval France, and some modern intrigue mixed in. Real modern, things like Napoleon's conquest of Egypt and the lost tomb of Cleopatra. I'll start with this large bronze of Ptolemy III of Egypt. It was struck somewhere around 222 BC and for quite a few years thereafter during his reign. It's a huge coin by modern coinage standards, weighing over 2 ounces of bronze, and it's over an inch and a half diameter and well over a quarter of an inch thick. It has two great short stories attached to it over the years, starting with it being the first coin-operated vending machine token for use right there in Egypt where it was minted. Um, the first vending machine was created by Hiram of Alexandria. We don't really know what he looked like. This is a 17th century sketch of him. He designed a device where a coin was dropped in a slot on the top and it dispensed a certain amount of water out of a little spout. And the local temple priests could use this both to automate and to monetize the task of distributing holy water at the temple entrances. This huge, heavy coin would have been ideal in such a machine. The second part of the story has to do with this monogram on the back. It's an easily recognized Chi-Rho monogram, joining of the Greek letters Chi and Rho between the eagle's legs on the reverse. It's a well-known Christian symbol, which led to some bizarre claims that it was some kind of a prophecy. Sphronos, the noted cataloger of Egyptian coins over a century ago, suggested it was a monogram of the Egyptian military commander Chromonides for traveling mints he used for issuing these coins in military payment. However, there is no supporting evidence for that anywhere. It's just something he put in his catalog and people quote it. The hordes don't support that kind of claim. As far as anyone can tell, the monogram is either for the Greek word chryso, meaning gold or golden, or possibly simply a mint control symbol standing for some other word that started with that. Not all coins of this denomination show that symbol. These bronze did have a value in both silver and gold. If you had enough of the coins, they were redeemable for silver and gold. So it might have had something to do with the gold. We really don't know. But there's more to the stories than this, because if we go back to Hiram of Alexandria, we have newer evidence now that reveals he lived much later than Ptolemy III, nearly 300 years later. So his invention of the first coin-operated vending machine, of which the first records date from the 1st century AD, couldn't have happened at the time that big coin was made. In fact, those big coins had disappeared from circulation over a century and a half before. His machines did vend water at the temples, but these would have been probably with the Roman Egyptian bronze coins that were about half this size that were used in Hiram's vending machines. So we do have a story here of vending machines, but it doesn't actually apply to this coin. And there's certainly no indication that the symbol on the back was prophetic in any way. So that's the first story and the tall tales that go with it, but don't make sense. Some of you will remember Sponsianus. the Roman emperor who never was. I did a tiny presentation about him a year or two ago when his coinage was being looked at again. These coins were found well over a century ago in the area north of Dacia, the Transylvania region. People who were looking at them again were not numismatists, and they did very scientific surface studies and said, hey, these coins actually circulated because they were worn, and came to the conclusion that the emperor must therefore have been real. However, these are of a similar style to tons of crude imitation coins of other types that have been found in that area for centuries. So don't look for Sponsianus to be added to your history books at any time in the near future. One of my favorites for stories was a wantless request from my years as a dealer in ancient medieval coins. I had a collector come in and say he wanted a coin that looked like this, the Emperor Constantine with the huge Cairo monogram on the reverse, because he was the first Christian emperor. It sounds like a real prize that would be both popular and fairly expensive, even if it weren't rare. He was prepared to pay hundreds or even thousands of dollars for one in really nice shape. There's a problem with this coin, though, and that's that the obverse of this coin doesn't have Constantine on it. It has Magnentius on it. Magnentius lived several decades after Constantine and struck this coin at a mint that didn't even exist during Constantine's reign. That's not really the only problem. The collector was of the somewhat sloppy opinion, I'd have to say, that somehow the Roman mints operated higgledy-piggledy with whatever dies they found, as though dies were just laying around loose in a die room somewhere, and they'd go pick out the current emperor and some interesting reverse and make something. And that, of course, is not the way it worked. I told him that such a coin wouldn't exist with Constantine and this reverse for various reasons having to do with how the coinage was issued. But he insisted that if I just looked hard enough, I could find him one. So I told him if I ever found him one, I'd let him know. And figured that was enough to make him go away. There are additional problems with the two coins. Here they are shown relative to each other in terms of size. The coin of Magnentius is almost twice the diameter of the coins of Constantine issued from his reign. And so the chances of even stray dies ever being paired up are zero, even if such dies were found. The Cairo did appear on coins of Constantine, but always as tiny little things. For instance, here we see a silver medallion of Constantine with the Cairo symbol as the central design at the top of his helmet crest. The Cairo was used by Constantine as a symbol identifying with Christianity from about 315 AD on. That's when this medallion was issued, but it was never a large part of the design. When it appeared, it was always a tiny little symbol hidden somewhere in the fields or in other parts of the design. So that coin that the guy wanted with Constantine on one side and Magnentius really could never have happened, no matter what circumstances arose. Another wantless request that I got was a beauty, and it sent me running to the history books to see if it was actually true. The guy said that there was a coin that was actually touched by Joan of Arc, and there should be hundreds, if not thousands, of them around, because what happened is that she had these coins struck to pay her troops after when she was fighting on behalf of Charles of France at the Siege of Orleans. After they lifted the Siege of Orleans, she is supposed to have paid her troops individually from her own hand, one coin at a time, to the troops, and that therefore any of the right coin that could be found had passed through her hands, and he wanted one. While Joan of Arc is much commemorated with numismatic items, no record of any such coinage ever being struck for payment at Orleans, or with a traveling mint moving with her, or any individual payment of her personally handing coins to troop, have ever been documented in any source. So in fact, the wonderful story he had about getting a coin that she had handled can't be true. So even had she done such a thing of personally paying some member of the military with money from her own purse, there'd be no way to ever know that. It wouldn't have been a special issue of coins. On August 21st, 1911, the painting known as the Mona Lisa was stolen from the Louvre in Paris. The museum shut down for a week to search the premises. They didn't know where it had gone. Possibly due to this search or some other search of the museum, to avoid the normal slipshod lack of care for things in storage, it was discovered that there was a locked basement storage room into which water from the nearby river had leaked, and it was full of mummies and mummy cases brought back by Napoleon's conquest of Egypt. The mummies and their cases had become rotten. The mummies had become so water-soaked that they were coming apart and decomposing. And the staff decided that since these hadn't been fully cataloged after Napoleon's return from Egypt in 1801, they would record all of the cartouches and inscriptions, and when they were done, they hauled the rotted corpses to Versailles for a nighttime internment. The entire fiasco was kept quiet to avoid embarrassment. One of the cartouches that they transcribed was later translated as belonging to the Ptolemaic Queen of Egypt, Cleopatra the Great. I heard this story from Dr. Gilbert, who was a PCNS member over 30 years ago, after he had learned of my interest in the Ptolemies. He said he was told this by one of the old museum staff at the Louvre, who took part in the clandestine burial of the mummies himself. So, is the mummy of Cleopatra the Great buried in the gardens of Versailles? If the notes for these cartouches were to surface, or if any renovation of the Versailles gardens starts to turn up mummies, we'll have corroborating evidence of this story. Until then, it's just another tall tale told to me by somebody who was told it by somebody who took part firsthand. So you can see how these tales get traveling around. So the coin-related tales here are of a kind extremely common among collectors and dealers, especially in areas of older coins where documentation is extremely thin. The fact that the coins themselves are often the only physical evidence of some rulers or mints leaves collectors and dealers free to speculate and elaborate on stories of what may have happened. Those who hear the stories often take them as fact, and we all know that a twice told tale is much more believable the next time it's repeated. So that's the end of my presentation. And Jason, go on to whoever's next.